Okay, we are starting a new chapter, chapter 3, and section 3.1 is telling us how to solve two-step equations. Now, in chapter 2, we touched on solving one-step equation, whether we were going to use addition or subtraction properties for inverse operation or multiplication or division properties for inverse operation. So today, we're going to involve both of those operations in order to solve different equations. So here we have a variety of steps in order to solve two-step equations. Step 1 is we're going to eliminate the constant by using addition or subtraction as the inverse operation. That's the first thing you do. You do not use multiplication or division first. You've got to make sure that you have to use addition or subtraction in order to solve your equation. So in this case, this problem is 3x plus 7 equals a negative 5. Since we are adding to a positive 7, I want to eliminate that by subtracting 7 to both sides. And when I do that, this cancels out because it becomes 0, so I'm left with 3x on the left-hand side of my equal sign, and negative 5 minus 7 gives me a negative 12. So we did step 2. We rewrote what is left over on each side of the equal sign, which we did. Left over was 3x, and what was left over on the right side was negative 12. Step 3, we're going to eliminate the coefficient by using multiplication or division. That's always the next step after you do addition or subtraction. So when you're doing two-step, you must do the addition or subtraction first, and then you can either do the multiplication or division, which means you're going to divide both sides by 3. This cancels this out and leaves you with an x, and then negative 12 divided by 3 is a negative 4. The last step, and it's probably the most important step, is you're going to substitute in your answer for the variable and solve to see if both sides of the equation are equal to one another. So here I'm going to go 3 multiplied by, instead of putting x there, I'm going to put a negative 4 plus 7 and see if it equals a negative 5. Well, doing the math, order of operation comes first, multiplication comes before addition, so it's negative 12 plus 7 equals a negative 5. Negative 12 plus 7 is negative 5, and negative 5 does equal negative 5. So it checks out. You must do this for all problems. If you are unsure of your answer, the best way to see if it holds true or not is to do this check. So let's do some more two-step equations. So first step is we got to see if we have to use addition or subtraction in order to solve for a variable. So for this one here, I got to subtract 1 from both sides. Oops. Erase this. Got to subtract 1 from both sides. So I'm cancels this out. I'm left over with the 4x equals 4. I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and x equals 1. This is kind of the work that I'm looking for in your homework problems and also in the tests or quizzes. So be mindful of that. Even though you can do it in your head, please, I want to see what's in your head. For the second problem, I'm going to subtract both sides by 8, which then eliminates this, which gives me 3n equals a negative 6. I got to use division in order to solve my variable, because the goal is still the same. The goal is to get the variable by itself on one side of the equal sign. In this case, n equals a negative 2. Last example, I have 1 equals 2r plus 9. So I have to eliminate that constant. Remember, the constant is a value that has no variable attached to it. So on the right-hand side, I'm left with 2r, and on the left-hand side, I'm left with a negative 8. So now I must get rid of the coefficient. I want to have my coefficient to be 1, so that means that r is by itself on one side of the equal sign, and r equals a negative 4. Okay? Now, using two steps using multiplication, everything stays the same like it did for when we were using division as our second step. You're still going to use addition or subtraction first. So you're still going to add, in this case, you're going to add 3 to both sides, which is what this operation is over here. All it is just showing you adding 3 to both sides to eliminate that constant. When you rewrite it, what's left over is x over 2 equals 4. And the next thing we have to do is eliminate the coefficient. The coefficient in this case happens to be 1/2, or divided by 2. So we're going to multiply this by 2 over 1. And you have to do the same thing to the right-hand side because it balances out the equation. This cancels out, and this leaves us with a value of 8. So that means that x equals 8. And if you were unsure if that was your answer, let's plug it back into the original equation. So I got 8 divided by 2 minus 3 equals 1. Well, I know that 8 divided by 2 is 4. And if I minus that by 3, does that equal 1? Yes, it does. So it checks out. So let's give some more a try. So we have b over 4 minus 8 equals 1. So the first thing we have to do is we have to eliminate the constant. The constant over here is 8. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides to eliminate that constant. So now I have what left over is b over 4 equals 9. Now in order to get our variable by itself on one side of the equal sign, I'm going to have to multiply both sides by 4. So it cancels out this. So all I'm left with is the variable b, and 9 times 4 is 36. Okay? Looking at the second example, 12 equals f divided by 2 minus 8. Again, we're going to eliminate the constant. So if it's a minus 8, and some people are getting confused on whether you have to add or subtract, you could always do this. You could always make it an addition problem, cross the line, change the sign, and you could always subtract it by the value, which then this is a cross the line, change the sign situation, which makes it an addition. Because negative 8 plus 8 gives me 0, so I'm just left with f divided by 2 equals 12 plus 8, which gives me 20. And to reach our goal of getting the variable by itself on one side of the equal sign, I have to multiply both sides by 2, and 2 times 20 is 40. Okay? Looking at these two examples, I have 12 minus 4s equals a negative 12. Give me some room here. Extend the page. So looking at this one, I need my constant here is a positive 12. So since it's a positive 12, I have to eliminate it. So by eliminating it, I must subtract both sides by 12. So be very careful about that. This then eliminates this, so this becomes a negative 4s equals a negative 24, because negative 12 minus 12 is a negative 24. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4, which then cancels this out. Well, all I'm left with is the variable s, and negative 24 divided by negative 4 is a positive 6, because remember from what we learned in previous chapters, a negative divided by a negative will give us a positive. Okay? Here, 6 minus 2m equals 8. We got to eliminate the constant, which we're going to subtract 6. So it eliminates this constant on the left-hand side. So all I'm left with is a negative 2m. Remember, because if you were to cross the line and change the sign, you would have a negative value there. Equals 8 minus 6, which gives us 2. And I'm going to use the division operation to get our variable by itself on one side of the equal sign. And 2 divided by negative 2 is a negative 1, because a positive divided by a negative will give us a negative value. So I got a story problem. So it says the total cost of repairing a car is the sum of the amount paid for parts and the amount paid for labor. You pay $78 for parts and $45 for each hour of labor. The total cost to repair the car was $168. How many hours did it take to repair the car? So we got a series of questions that we're looking at. The first section asks us, what does your variable x equal in this problem? Well, it's what we want to solve. And what we want to solve for is how many hours did they work? Because we know the total, we know how much the parts cost, and we know how much the hourly wage was. So if I were to write this as a verbal model, I would say it would be 78 plus 45 times a number is 168. So if I change the verbal model into an equation, it's going to look like 78 plus 45x equals 168. And now I'm just going to take, and I'm going to subtract 78 from both sides. And I'm left with cancellation here, so I got 45x equals 90. I'm going to divide both sides by 45, which gives me x by itself on one side, the equal sign, and x is going to equal 2. And it was 2 hours. So it took the repair shop 2 hours to fix the car. Last thing we have for this section is some more verbal models. Tells us is that 5 minus the product of 2 and a number is 7. So we got 5. That minus tells us it's going to be subtraction. The product, which means it's going to be 2 times a number, gives me the equal sign, is 7. And for the last one, it's 13 plus product of 6 and a number is 67. Okay? and that is being able to solve two-step equations. Hope this helps. Till next time.